Hello, I'm Clint Myers, and this is my Module 6 discussion post regarding privilege and ableism. So the first prompt, when was I first aware of privilege? I would say in elementary school is kind of where I first became aware of privilege. Of course, I didn't use those terms. I was more aware of who was rich and who was poor, based on clothes that people wore. I knew kids who were poor based on what they wore, the houses they lived in, the cars they drove. Um, However, I also kind of considered not myself not poor, but kind of down there because my parents drove old cars too. My dad, when I was growing up in the late 90s, drove a 1979 Datsun pickup truck that he had bought to build our house and kept driving, and it was painted Crayola blue with a paintbrush, and the muffler had fallen off, and it was very loud. But my sister was just absolutely embarrassed of it. I thought it was super cool because it was loud, and he let me shift the manual transmission sitting in the middle seat. But so even though I was aware of rich and poor, like it didn't bother me so much that I knew we were kind of on the lower end of the economic food chain, but I was fine with it. But I was aware when my friends who had more than me or were richer than me, they could do things, buy things, go places that I couldn't go. And I did resent my parents for that a little bit. I was kind of a little bit of a brat. Um, but my understanding at that time was very materialistic, and it was still very materialistic probably into high school. And I think most kids don't really understand or learn privilege until they're older, high school, college age. Even then, I don't think they're able to identify it or describe it in the terms that we use in this course. I know personally it's only been recently, the last couple of years, especially this year, just with the combination of current events and things going on, along with this content that we're learning in this class and the terminology we're using. Only recently have I been more aware and more willing to confront the idea that I might actually have privilege, which I'll admit I do now. I used to not. I thought, I work just as hard as everybody else. I don't have privilege. I'm barely getting by. I'm a teacher. I don't make much money. Like, life is hard. But in page 81 of the textbook, when it talks about the immersed fish in the water and how those with privilege, the water is carrying you along, you're going with the water instead of against it. That metaphor really stuck out to me and helped me understand, yes, I do have privilege. No, it's not an indictment on my character. I'm not a bad person because I'm privileged. It's just I check off a lot of the boxes. I'm a white male. Um, I have a college education. I am middle class. I'm a Christian. I check off a lot of the boxes that, you know, are the dominant group. So therefore, I have a lot of privilege. But I like the metaphor because I think it hits home and really explains privilege in a way that most people can relate to. And hopefully, people are more willing to try to understand it with a metaphor like that. I think that metaphor needs to be shared because I think a big barrier right now is that people are just not willing to confront these issues, and they're automatically defensive because it's just not communicated in a way that people really understand. The second prompt was talking about how ableism has changed in my lifetime. I think it's changed to include more of the invisible disabilities, um, like ADD, ADHD, mental health, chronic illnesses, things like that, where in the past we didn't really identify them. We just thought something was wrong with that person, or man, like, why is that kid acting so crazy? They're just a bad kid, that kind of thing. We're starting to confront this at school by identifying students and helping them earlier on to live with their disability, and as teachers, getting better at using different learning styles to teach to help students who have some of these disabilities thrive and really understand that their disability is not necessarily a bad thing. I try to encourage students, with ADHD, for instance, to embrace it and think of it as them having an advantage over their peers, in certain situations. There's still a lot to be done, though, I think, in regards to microaggressions. In the reading and the other research resources, it talked about how people will say things, sometimes innocently, I'm feeling depressed today, or man, I'm feeling so ADHD today, or I'm so OCD about this, which is technically a microaggression towards people that actually have these disabilities. So I think it's a byproduct of there being more awareness about these disabilities, but society is still lacking sensitivity and still ignorant. Anyway, hope that all made sense. Have a great day.